Welcome to the Data Product Management in Action podcast, created and executive produced by me, Scott Hurlman, and brought to you by Soda, your best friend in data quality and contracts tooling. We created this podcast to serve as a place for actual practitioners bringing product management practices to data, whether that is to AI and ML, data products, platforms, or everything else in data, right? And it's to dig into the nitty-gritty of product management in data, but in fun and dynamic conversations. It's not just lift and shift from software product management. We have a great set of hosts for you that are also practitioners, so they can really get into those specifics and dive deep and get you the information you want to know rather than just high level, here is what a data product is. This is about cutting through the noise of data product management to drive towards actionable insights, hence the actual podcast name, Data Product Management in Action. So sit back and enjoy another awesome conversation.
Hey everyone, I'm Michael Toland, one of your hosts for the Data Product Management in Action podcast, sponsored by Soda and the spinoff of the Data as a Product podcast network with Scott Hurlman. As always, all of our guests are representing their own views and not the views particularly of their employer. And I'm really thrilled today to be joined by Tarek Elqoulaq. He is a product manager at Power Digital Marketing. Tarek, how's it going today?
Good. How are you, man?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to be chatting with you. Give our audience and listeners a little bit more about you. Like, how did you get into product management, particularly data product management? And, what are you working on right now?
Yeah, for sure. So I am Tarek. I'm based in San Diego, California. I am a data platform product manager. I work at a growth marketing agency called Power Digital. Basically, I'm working with our data team or on our data team, and we're doing this kind of build out of a new data platform, which is really meant to be kind of like purpose built to like reliably and scalably enable kind of our hundreds of clients to maximize the ROI of their online marketing campaigns through data driven decision making. That's kind of like how I would frame the kind of high level problem that we're really trying to tackle on the data side. And I'm like especially more focused on building out the data infra side of the data platform, kind of like building out that master data layer for the platform. I have a previous background in product growth and consulting with a focus in SEO, where I got the opportunity to work with a number of different like enterprise and like startup clients. I worked with Audible, Spotify, Dropbox, and many others in the past when I was more focused in SEO. I also ran and still to today a little bit run my own independent consulting practice before kind of like fully transitioning into product, where I focused on like building out user growth strategies for early stage funded startups. So yeah, it's a little bit about me.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing. And I think it's really fascinating, all of the different, backgrounds that the folks that I chat with have. I'm really interested if you could just walk us through from the start of marketing as your main background and that journey that you took to become a data platform product.
Yeah, definitely been a journey. It's helped me because one aspect that's helped is that I'm still working at a growth marketing agency. So like the domain is still marketing. So that's helped me kind of hang in there. But really, I'd say the journey, basically, I got introduced to product management as a whole from my old boss, actually like sending me a link to a Lenny newsletter article. And I liked the article. I poked around. Usually when I like newsletters or articles stuff, I look more around the person and I kind of see like, oh, they got more stuff like this going on. And so I liked a lot of stuff around on the newsletter, and I saw like his book recommendations, kind of cliche, but I bought Inspired by Marty Kagan, and I read that. I think it's like a very cliche story, but that is what happened. And I like the way, I don't know, I see Marty Kagan feeling like very ideal, like he gives the ideal scenario. And so I like the ideal kind of like outlook on product management and what that role looks like and stuff. So that led me to kind of want to transition, like actually into management. And so I pursued it basically as like a transition internally at my current company. I went to leadership. I pitched kind of the idea, and I was able to get the green light for that. My plan really was, given my background in SEO and product growth, to actually like focus and target like more of like a growth PM role. So PMing, but with more like a focus on user acquisition, monetization, or retention and engagement. That was kind of basically my plan, was to like internally transition, get more of a grasp on like the core PM skills, and then find a company with like a really strong channel product fit with SEO basically, and then kind of like try to join on their growth team. But little did I know really that at the time that since my company, since it is a growth marketing agency, we're in MarTech, we're B2B, the technology that we had built at that time and still to this day, they were like pretty much they were data products. They were very analytical in nature. The value of them came from the data that was presented to them. So they're very data heavy. So I slowly like got introduced to concepts like ETLs and like S3 buckets and like all these, all the jargon. But obviously I had no idea what they meant at the time.
Jargon is the right term for it. Your head spins if you're not in the space. I mean, oh, yeah.
Tell me about it. Yeah. And so, yeah, then it became really kind of more of a priority basically at my company, I would say, where they wanted to build out like a new data platform team and start really migrating all the different data platforms that we have into under one infrastructure, ideally. So basically, I asked to be on this team and be the PM for that roadmap. The rationale literally was just because all I knew about it was that you have to be more technical. That's kind of like, that's how I, in my head, basically rationalized this whole thing at the time. And I just had this like philosophy that, whatever role you're in, if there's like a technical skew of it, it's like probably better because there's like usually lower supply, there's like usually higher demand for like, I feel like the more technical roles. So that was literally the rationale behind it. I had no idea that what I was working on was like a data platform and that I'd be like responsible for all these different things. So yeah, not having like a CS background or a data M background definitely made it hard in the beginning. Like I said, though, I think that my background in marketing consulting is what kind of kept me afloat. I definitely had like 1 foot in, 1 foot out in the early days because I wasn't really bought in yet into the whole idea of working in the world of data. And like, but now I have a much better understanding of what that looks like and like data platforms and kind of the trends there.
Yeah. Having worked on a data mesh implementation platforms, got lots of questions for you centered around the platform side of it, because it's something that I'm still trying to unpack myself. But before I jump into that, I appreciate the recommendations, Inspired, Marty Kagan, the Silicon Valley Product Group. They're an interesting bunch of people. I really, really love them and the work that they do. So a shout out to the team and what Marty has helped to build. I'm going to give a special shout out to Christian Idiotti, who, if you haven't seen any of his work out of the SVPG gang, I think he has some of the best coaching and materials to upskill product managers that I've ever seen. Just a really brilliant guy. So I'll throw that out there. You mentioned, and I missed it, a blog that you started that your old boss had introduced you to. What was the name of the blog?
That Lenny's newsletter, I think.
Oh, Lenny's newsletter. Oh, got it. Yeah. Fantastic. So those are two instances of like resources and whatnot. I'm curious other resources that you may have looked into to help transition into this, this new sort of career that you've made for yourself. And then are there additional resources that were more specific to like this world of data platform product?
Absolutely. Yeah. So the way I kind of look at it, in terms of like learning, I'd break it down into like different vectors basically. So one, I got to keep in mind, like I was green to even product management. I was transitioning to data and product at the same time. So one for me category or topic, a high level would be just like technology in and of itself, like just learning, becoming more like technologically fluent. Like if you're going to be a product manager, you're going to work in technology, you should have like, I don't know, I feel like a basic understanding of how the internet works, like servers, APIs, webhooks, that kind of type of thing. So there's a good resource on YouTube. It's free. It's Harvard. They have their CS50 understanding technology playlist on YouTube. I think it's it gives you a really good intro to technology, like just how it works in general, which I think is useful. And then there's the whole vector of like improving your data literacy or like your fluency kind of in data. So definitely, I think for a data platform PM, you definitely, I think should know SQL. So that's some time I would spend in that. You should have like strong kind of grasp on database concepts, data modeling concepts, basically all the different components of data engineering, and just get a good grasp of like use cases basically you're going to serve. as a data platform PM. There's two resources that have helped me a lot in like the whole data fluency side. One is by Joe Reese, who I think he wrote like the introduction to data engineering fundamentals, or the fundamentals of data engineering. Like he wrote the O'Reilly book for that, like the data engineering fundamentals book. Well, he has like a course on the O'Reilly website that's free, where it's just basically like the video version of his book, I guess. So I like found that by accident, kind of.
Nice.
It was a really good resource. Like he goes from A to Z, and it's really PM friendly because it's like an intro to fundamentals. You know, it's not like something too deep. And then the other one is a newer one actually, but Chad Sanderson, he talks a lot about on the data side on LinkedIn and stuff. He has a cohort on Maven that he's doing, mastering AI ready data infrastructure. So that I was in the first cohort for that, and it was very, very insightful. So I definitely suggest that for like improving like data fluency. And then the other two like kind of vectors I would look at are like just DevOps and like data ops side of things, like CI/CD, version control, SDLC, like just work, because you're gonna work with engineers a lot. It's like these are all terms that they use a lot. So there's a technology for product managers playlist on YouTube by Hello PM, I think is their name. That like they have like a bunch of different videos on that topic. So I think that's a really good resource. And then just like PM fundamentals in general. Like I think product thinking, I think being a better like analytical thinker, you know, work on your leadership skills. There's a lot of cross-functional collaboration and product management, you know, XFN partnerships, what they call it. So that's definitely something too, that I wish I spent more time earlier on actually working on. I try to follow like also different types of people. So for example, like they'll follow like a set of product managers outside of data, and then product managers that are in like the data world. I like to follow like also like other data practitioners, so like data engineers, data scientists, data analysts, and then entrepreneurs in the data space. To me, like they put out like there's a Anand Sunwell. He's the founder of CB Insights. He puts out some great stuff. But I'd say like, besides all those concepts, I think one thing that's really important, if you are somebody who's trying to like work on a data platform within maybe your current company, maybe you want to internally transition, or maybe you're already a data platform PM, but you want to grow, you want to learn more. I think what's super important is that you take the time to understand like the architecture and the design specifically of like the systems that you work on at your company, because there's typically a ton of jargon there that is used by engineers in like meetings that are like just really specific to their code base or specific to their repository or a solution they're trying to implement. And like all the learning on those, like just subjects that I previously mentioned, it still won't get you up to speed on that kind of stuff, because those are more like being specific. And I find like that's really where a lot of the confusion, at least for me, lied, you know, when I was in these meetings. So,
you know, yeah, I think, you know, as a consultant, I really resonate with that last fact, because one, a lot of organizations don't do a great job in documentation of their systems, getting good architectural diagrams, keeping them updated. And I'm really thrilled that there are a lot of different tools now to start helping with that. But sometimes I think that those tools are probably a little over-architected and are going a little bit too much into the depth of details. I know that Lucid has this sort of, if you're building all of your stuff in the cloud, they have a platform that will allow you to basically auto view your cloud infrastructure and architecture, which is helpful. But sometimes it really helps to have someone like actually map and draw it out, a simplified layer that's a little bit more messy and human to start gathering that piece. But I cannot agree more. Taking the time to understand an internal company's architecture, their systems, how these things relate to each other. And you don't maybe have to go down to all the APIs and services, but you should understand sort of, I think at a high level, what the services that are most commonly called are, what are some common attributes that are passed by these systems. So I really appreciate that. The other thing I think, and I think this serves as a nice vector towards our next conversation point, is you really talk about some of the use cases that you have to, you know, really understand to serve as a good data platform PM. And so I think understanding those use cases really talks about understanding and serving the end users. And on a platform, there's tons of users, right? And I'm curious first, help me understand how you identify all of the diverse sets of users who come to a data platform.
Yeah, so it's interesting because you use the term users. Like I actually I find the term users like broad, and it's hard to, because you made this distinction between like customers and users, and so that's the thing confusing me about the term users. So how I like to frame it is actually like partners versus customers. So this idea, think about like kind of like delivering value. Basically, you have, and kind of like that value exchange between what is basically two parties, a provider, and then you have the customer, right? And so the provider is, providing some type of value, and then the customer is responding basically with some type of payment or whatever. It could be money, but it could also be other things too, obviously. And when you break it out this way, you see that like the provider can be multiple parties. It doesn't just have to be like the business. Like, for example, a really clear example I would say is like Uber, for example. You have the driver side, and then you have the rider side. I would consider the rider like the customer, and the driver is really a partner with Uber. Essentially, the Uber is partnering with the drivers. So yeah, technically they're users. Both the drivers and riders are users, but I try to make a distinction between. I find it really helps me like to make a distinction between the partners, which are the people, maybe in a platform sense, are the other internal people that work at your company, versus the customers who we're all trying to basically serve and provide value to. So that's how I like to kind of distinguish the two. And I think, yeah, when you do it that way, you kind of frame it as, okay, I'm actually partnering with you. It's all these like internal people that you're working with to better serve the end customer and ultimately provide them basically more value. So, I mean, at a high level, it's really easy because if you understand the use cases of a data platform, like at a really high level, then it's very easy to kind of just map those to who the people are within an org that would be responsible for that. So, for example, I think first one, like machine learning is like a kind of just powering like machine learning models, AI products, basically. So those are going to be like data scientists, ML engineers that you're going to work with. Experimentation is another one. I think that's also kind of related to the machine learning kind of data scientist workflow there. And then at a high level, data platform is going to be used to power BI across the organization, data analytics, business intelligence, that type of thing. So that's where, you're going to partner with data engineers, analytics engineers, data analysts, like different business stakeholders to really accomplish that. And then there's the whole data activation piece, or just kind of serving the data to like data products, or maybe you want to send data out of the warehouse to third-party systems. That's might work with users, might be product managers, there might be other business stakeholders. And then I think there's that, right? So a lot of those names I just mentioned are like, they're developers, they're engineers that work in data. But there's also going to be functions in, I think, every org where they may not be developers, but they're highly data like fluent, and data plays like a big role in their day-to-day. You know what I mean? So maybe like business analysts at a certain organization, maybe the, finance team, the sales team, that kind of thing. So I think those are typically, like, again, the partners or the users that you're working close with as a data platform PM to essentially, kind of provide that end value to the customer.
Yeah, I love the distinction and the sort of partnership instead of users. I think that's a nice way of kind of getting out of these traditional sort of mental models we build. So I really appreciate that, because it truly is. You're to your point, working across a collaborative team to sort of build this thing, and also building in such a way that will help them make their lives easier and do their jobs better, which is never, in my opinion, easy. That is the rub and hard part, because a lot of people are going to have ideas. They're going to throw requirements back at you. They're going to really kind of come in and just maybe tell you what you should be doing and what you shouldn't. And you have to sift through all that noise. And I'm just curious then, when you're working with all these individuals who are partners, if you can kind of walk us through the process of like how you gather their feedback and turn those into like honing in on what problems they're trying to communicate, and gathering and building out the requirements for your engineering team to actually start building out the platform. What does that process look like, as opposed to a lot of requests we get will be like, oh, I need this immediate ad hoc report for this executive presentation I'm writing tomorrow, which is really the output of, the culmination of all the work you're doing. But how do you sift through all of that feedback that you get and these sort of one-off requests to actually build a really robust platform focused on those requirements?
Yeah. I think, it's gonna be a little different based on the company, because different companies, they might have slightly different responsibilities or like roles that the data platform team is responsible for versus, maybe, there's another data team, but they focus more on like actually producing dashboards and stuff. But I'd say if I'm talking to like an internal user, I'd love to just first get an idea of what their role is, kind of like what their roles, broader purposes within the org. Like, are they focused on increasing revenue? Are they trying to decrease churn, like increase efficiency? So I'm really trying to like kind of profile them basically, categorize them into a segment, which can be easy when you're working with other internal people, because you can kind of look to like where the department they work at or something like that as like a starting point. I find out that it's like helpful to just frame everyone as an analyst basically on the business side. So like just look at their part of the role that is data specific or that needs data, because they have the people who the roles and the users that like don't use data as much on a day-to-day basis, they might, if you just focus on their job titles, it might get confusing, because then you're segmenting by this, kind of thing that's completely out of your control, and you don't really know how those job titles are even came up with in the first place. But there's that, and then there's kind of like, okay, trying to get like a high level workflow of like a typical day for them, and try to break out kind of like what are like the high level like outputs that they're responsible for in their job. So if you're a business analyst, maybe there's like some type of analysis that you need to do on like companies or businesses. So there's like this repeatable kind of like deliverable that you have, right? And then try and narrow down on those descriptions of those use cases. So like I'm trying to understand where are the areas or like opportunities where data is basically required to perform the function, and just looking for problems basically that they're experiencing that I think platform can help with. So maybe there's a metric that they really want, or a data source specifically that we just don't support yet, we don't integrate with, that would really help kind of solve this problem essentially. And then I'm working with these users, like, help me justify like working on this use case. Like, if this is solved, what does that do for you? How does that impact the business? And then what's also really important, obviously, is like, what are the decisions they're trying to make, and how do those decisions impact like different actions basically that get taken at the org? So some decisions are going to be like higher priority than others. And so that is definitely key to kind of understand, I would say.
Yeah, I really think it's really important to understand what are particularly around data, if folks are using data to drive decision making, which is, I think, one of the key goals of the data apparatuses within these organizations, outside of then just also running business logic, so that we can automate so much of our workflows with what our systems are doing. I'm curious to dive in maybe a little bit deeper, though, is like everyone's got opinions. And so when you're really hearing from everyone, like, this is my problem, and they say there's like, oh gosh, what have I heard? Like, I've heard data engineers say it's really hard to build a data product on this platform as it is today. Okay. And then you've got to, well, why is that hard? Tell me more about what you're trying to build. Like, how do you then translate all of that feedback then to like specific requirements that you're building on the platform? And maybe walk through like an example of a requirement if you can think of one. But really, like, I struggle often taking folks' feedback and what they state as their problems. And part of this is probably because I'm still relatively new to some of the data platform work, and like turning that into a concrete requirement. And typically I'm involving my engineers to help build out those requirements because they're going to understand the technology side better. I'm really trying to distill the problem that needs to be solved. But I'm just curious, like, what's that look like in your process to go from gathering all of this information to then working with your engineering team to drive, like, here is what we should do as a solution?
So I think as a data platform, maybe you have different tools at your disposal, basically. And you need to decide, when you encounter a problem, can one of these tools that I have in my tool belt, like, does it fit to solve this, basically? So you're powering machine learning operations, you're powering experimentation, you're powering BI, kind of business intelligence across the org. So like, when you come across a problem, can you solve that problem with one of those things, basically, is like how I would frame it, essentially. So, for example, let's just imagine it's like a reporting problem, or just somebody is, on the team is having trouble producing, some type of dashboard for like customers, whatever. Okay. Then you could kind of break that down. You don't need the user to break that down for you. You can kind of like basically translate it for yourself. Okay, where in the platform, what in the platform we need to change in order to produce the data set that you're looking for, and ultimately like show this visualization that you want on your dashboard. So maybe that's like a data modeling problem, for example, right? So then, okay, now I know the tool that I'm using, basically. It's a data modeling problem, right? Or it's a problem that a new data model can solve, essentially. So then I know, okay, I'm building a solution to this will be a new model that we make available basically in the platform, and we enable like data analysts to build on top of, or to use use to build their dashboards. So then that tells me, okay, well, if the data model is a solution, who usually builds data models is data engineers or analytics engineers. So I know that's going to be like my partner, the person I'm going to work with on the data team, that I need to basically translate requirements to. So now I know the problem, I know how I'm going to solve it, or the high level solution, essentially, and who I'm going to work with to implement this. And then so I'm going to tailor the requirements basically to that scenario. So if I'm plating up requirements for a data model, then I want to communicate to the analytics engineer, like who's going to be using that data model, what processes, like what business processes are we looking to provide more insights to, what are our users or customers that are interested, like what are they interested in getting insights on, what are like questions that they want answered, right? So that's like I hope that's like a specific example that can kind of show how you go from problem to like high level solution idea. It's a little different because when you're an application product manager, you work with designers to like come up with solutions, or like they kind of own the solutions. You kind of own the problem space, and then you kind of like together and you build, with the engineer something. But in platform world, I don't know, you can like build an interface to your platform, and you'd work with designers in that sense. But typically you are working with the engineer directly to come up with solutions. There's no like design person really that you're.
Yeah, there is, I think, a lot of conversations I've had pretty recently in the past year has really talked through like, what does it mean to be a data product designer or a data platform designer? And like, I think we don't think often enough that design is not just a UI or an interface that someone interacts with. It's really about the experience they're having. And I think that a lot of design folks, particularly with AI, are starting to think through and change a little bit of their mental models. And like, maybe not everything's a UI. It's really around understanding and designing for an experience. And how does that look? And how do we untangle that? And I think it's pretty new. I've never seen a data designer or data like product designer or data platform designer role officially, but I feel like it's probably going to have to get somewhere if we're reviewing sort of the common trifecta of product design and technology. And so I'm really interested in that. But I guess not to go down that rabbit hole, because I don't have an answer, and I'm not certain we will get there, but I'm curious to back us up. Once you've started, deploying, different aspects and capabilities on this data platform, what are you measuring as the success of the data platform? Like, how are you ensuring that behaviors of your users are in alignment with what your business is hoping to drive with the data platform? What are some of those key metrics that you would recommend anyone sort of building out a data platform or taking ownership of an existing data platform to continue enhancing? And what do you think is really important and matters?
Yeah, I think it's a challenge on the platform side, because it's more, you're not at the application level. So like more work you have to do to kind of like articulate how this ties to the business essentially. But I think the first thing you have to do is you have to base this off of how of a framework, like of how your data org kind of really thinks about the value they bring to the business. So there's different ways you can kind of frame that up, but depending on the org that you're at, right? So like maybe you're framing it as, well, kind of the end outcome, business outcome really is that we help improve ROI, right, for the business. And then you have all these different inputs basically to ROI. And maybe for the data org specifically, there's 2 inputs that they specifically improve, which is maybe like say decision quality and decision speed, right? And then you want to break down the inputs to those and go a layer deeper, basically. Okay, so for example, okay, I'm improving decision quality, right, which leads to, improving ROI. But what's the inputs to improving decision quality? Well, it's improving the quality of insights that you make, right? So better data, more data that you can make insights off of. It leads to just better insights, better decisions, right? Okay, and then what is the output? That's really the quality of insights. Really an output of, now we're getting to like the platform level, your pipeline, the automations that you run, your transformations, kind of like the system that you built, essentially. And so it really just becomes an exercise of mapping these different inputs and outputs to some mechanism or like definition that you can use to track progress and report against it to leadership. And then I think there's also like this non-functional requirements aspect of a data platform that you need to be able to measure. It'll yield you more like technical KPIs. And then ideally you're meeting those requirements at like the lowest cost possible, essentially, and then maintaining that. But this is kind of like a framework I picked up on from Richa Verma, who she writes the Data PM Gazette newsletter on Substack. She's probably my like favorite person to read on like for data platform product management. And she has a good like product analytics for data platforms post where she kind of talks about using this framework of kind of like pulling from the IT system, kind of like playbook essentially of, really focusing on like these pillars of being performant, making sure the system is performant, reliable, and scalable. And then again, like mapping those metrics to the business. So maybe for like, if you're trying to measure performance basically, or performantness of your system, maybe you use logs to quantify and like you understand the amount of successes or failures, right, in terms of like different major services on the platform. Or maybe if you're trying to show reliability, you show uptime or like data quality incidents basically that you've encountered or how they've kind of been trending, right? But what's really important is that if you're going to go this like more technical KPI route, that you need to make sure that KPIs are like spelling out that you're spelling out, they actually level up to business KPIs. Because obviously senior leadership, they don't care about uptime, they don't care about all this stuff, right? And so that's kind of the role of the PM, is to tell the story about how those technical KPIs kind of level up into bringing in more money for the org. And a more like business type KPIs, I would look at like what platforms could really, data platforms really could impact is increasing like sales or ARR at a B2B by adding like integrations, right? So I might remove like sales blockers. It might help increase close rate or chances of like making more sales. The other kind of way you can look at it is increasing like product stickiness or user retention. Maybe you're introducing or you're powering up some data product or some just kind of like value that's deriving from your platform that is making users more sticky to the product, right? And improving retention. And then there's another vector, which is like increasing revenue from adding partners, which you can do through integrations. So if you're bringing in more customers for platforms that you integrate with, there might be like referral fees or maybe there's like something like that where kind of like externally pricing those partners in. So I think I would go back to the kind of first thing I said, which is really it just depends on how you want to frame it, and kind of like the framework you want to use and the story you want to tell, and then it just becomes a matter of measuring how you're going to measure those things.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head with the story you want to tell. I find that a lot of folks who work really in day-to-day data, who have traditional backgrounds of computer science and data analytics, they're not the best storytellers. They're really good at telling you the facts. And here's what the thing is, but they have a really hard time connecting that back to the story. I think the other thing that you rightly to really focus on, because the huge thing that's happening right now in the space, is those cost metrics being so important, particularly as a lot of these solutions used to have kind of fixed costs. You knew what I was going to have based on the contract that I signed. And then kind of in the past year and a half, 2 years, seemingly overnight, a lot of these organizations that we choose as vendors to supply our data platform needs have switched to variable pricing. And it's caused a lot of consternation amongst a lot of CFOs around just their data orgs being this big cost center. I'm not certain if you've seen that as well, as you've mapped out some of these KPIs and started to see some of the change just within the industry.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's the thing too with data platforms is they're looked at as kind of this cost center. And, it's like, that's another challenge really is how can I flip that narrative on its head and basically kind of show how it's a revenue driver. I mean, there's going to be costs and there's always going to be like a work stream within like managing kind of the roadmap for a data platform is cost management. But yeah, I mean, you can also tell a narrative or tell a story where, maybe a pipeline that your platform team built is powering like a really important machine learning model that, has like a really big impact on revenue for the company. And that's the type of thing that, you can use to kind of show like more top line business metrics and the impact that the platform team is having with leadership.
Yeah. I think then, to kind of move on, this space is now fervently changing. It kind of feels very frenetic with AI coming in. There seems to be a new database technology being built. I just met the CEO of Aperture Database, and she is fantastic, Vishaka Gupta. But there just seems to be this never-ending swath. I think the number of sort of data-related industry companies, I saw a slide recently, it grew from maybe 50 to 100 to like over 1,000 commonly named that are across these organizations. And so given this rapidly evolving field of data technologies, the rise of artificial intelligence through these large language models and the integration kind of du jour of everything, I'm really curious, how the hell do you just stay updated on all of these new tools, these capabilities that are launching seemingly at breakneck speed? I feel like every 3 to 6 months, there's some new discovery or new product out in the market solving new and novel problems.
Yeah, it's interesting because when I was in SEO, it was funny because I used to think that was like an SEO thing only. Like I used to think, so I'm basically helping people rank higher on Google, and Google's algorithm changes all the time. So you got to stay up to date, and that's you just have to do that. But it's interesting because what I realized is actually just anything in technology. If you're in technology at all.
Fair. Yeah, that's true. You're not wrong.
Yeah, there's like a key, like you just have to you have to have a system for like staying up to date essentially. So yeah, I would go back to really the people that you follow, like newsletters, that type of thing. That's going to be really key. So for me, actually personally, how I do it is I kind of have this like system kind of within my inbox and like my personal inbox. How I do it is I have basically I have like different types of emails that I have come in, and then I like label them a little bit. So I have like labels in orange, which will be all the newsletters or something like that I subscribe to that are like their purpose is to tell you or to update you on like what happened this week in data engineering or what happened this week in enterprise world or something like, right? So that's like the first type of kind of like newsletter that I would like to frame it. So it's the set of kind of just resources that you follow and keep up to date, where their job is literally just to tell you what's new in the industry, what's happening. And then there's like the opinionated kind of like Substacks or newsletters of people that you can follow. These are people who they're not trying to keep you up to date. They're just talking. They're giving you their commentary about kind of what's going on and what they think is going on and everything like that, right? So really helpful if you're on the data platform side, like follow your people who you work with. Not like literally, but I mean like you work with data scientists, so like follow other data scientists. That's how you build better empathy with them. You know what I mean? And I would say the other thing really is that you're going to want to kind of work with, like there's different pieces basically that I like specifically like to follow, like for data engineers, Seattle Data Guys YouTube channel is really good. Zach Wilson has some really good stuff that he puts on LinkedIn. Bottom line though, if you're a product manager, just like the most important thing, stay on top of the technology trends and stay on top of like the consumer trends. Like that's really kind of the bottom line. And that's what's really going to enable you to be like the best product thinker, because then you could take that information and you can use it to kind of frame, kind of give yourself the best framing of the context, which will lead into you building a product that's going to fit the market, if that makes sense. So
I'm absolutely baffled and impressed by your labeling of your newsletters on their purpose. My inbox is just this mess. My personal inbox is like 50-some thousand emails that are unread. And then my work one, I do a really good job of keeping inbox 0. But I can't imagine, you made me rethink and calibrate, should I be organizing my email better rather than just relying on search, which is really powerful in Gmail, which luckily is where a lot of organizations use, as opposed to Outlook, which I will go on record to say that I'm not a fan of Outlook search. But I'm flabbergasted that you've got sort of your opinions and commentary. You've got the updates that all sorted in these newsletters. And I'm like, wow, this is making me rethink how I approach my own learning. I tend to do it kind of haphazard and I'm go through. I'm curious then, once you've got these, you've got your resources, you've got your requirements, you understand sort of now what you're after. Then in product, there's always this balance of sort of fortifying and improving existing functionality for a data platform, making certain that those non-functional requirements staying up to date, and that as you add new capabilities, you're not, your measurable KPIs around cost and latency and throughput, those aren't being impacted negatively as you build out these new features. And I guess how do you balance that? How do you balance building out these new capabilities that folks are constantly demanding, as opposed to improving existing functionality? And how do you, what are your take?
Well, yeah, it's interesting because I feel like part of the product, whole operating model, is to not really care too much about what everyone's demanding. And it's kind of I'll put it in the backlog, but ultimately you're kind of, you have kind of this high level context that you need you're scoped within. So there's some business outcome, or there's this business focus that you're trying to achieve essentially. And so that's kind of the scope that I like to use. And so if there are requests, if there are things that people are demanding that fall within that scope, great. That's going to help us towards our goal. But the platform teams, the thing is, when you're on a platform team, it's so usually, typically it's wide. You have so many different people that you touch. If in my situation, we're powering basically all of our data analytics business houses at our company, and we have these hundreds of clients, and every client gets reporting. It's kind of part of their services, and then we also have internal reporting as well. So there's just too much. So you have to work with some type of scope. You have to have some type of focus, which ideally you get help from your leadership. They help translate for you, what's going on with senior leadership and what's high level business focus. Is this quarter, are we trying to pull on this, increasing, improving margins lever, or are we trying to, really kind of increase growth, or are we trying to reduce churn? You know what I mean? That's something, if you're B2B, that's kind of so, you take that context, that kind of scope that gets handed down to you maybe, and kind of see what out of what you have on your plate, or what you discover from your discovery based on that scope, is going to help you get to that place. You know what I mean? It's going to help you achieve that goal. I think there's I've learned that with product management, such a big part of it is prioritization. It's just knowing what to prioritize. And the other thing that's helped me is just this idea that the PM does not have to be the ideator. The PM just has to be kind of more the aggregator of ideas, I think, is how I like to frame it, basically. So work with the people, the partners kind of mentioned before, own the responsibility of articulating to them all the necessary context you need to have, the problems that we're trying to really solve, so that they can help you, and they could also give you ideas, because really your ideas are really just one slice of the pizza, and their ideas are also just a slice. You know what I mean? And that's really helped me too, is framing it, and I don't need to be the one responsible for coming up with the best ideas. I just need to orchestrate and work with everybody and know how to identify kind of which ideas, which solutions, which things that could we work on that are going to most likely impact and achieve this business goal that we might have, or this business outcome we're trying to achieve.
Yeah, I really love that you specifically that the product manager is not always the ideator, but the aggregator of ideas. And I think that's so vital. I think a lot of times, particularly in organizations that don't have mature product thinking, they think that the product owner, product manager sort of role that they have dreamt of just needs to figure out the solutions. Or the other inverse is the director or above, the hippo, if you will, highest paid person with their opinions, they're going to just say, go build this. And it's like, well, the ability to push back. I think your point about focus, I'm a big fan of Radical Focus by Christine Wodtke. It's one of my favorite books. And the idea of making certain that you understand how to ruthlessly prioritize and how to say no effectively without turning people off, because that's a big part of, I think, the product manager role is less the relationship building and making certain your partners feel vested in you and what you're building. And then again, working with your entire team to really build out the solution to the problem you're trying to solve. So wholly have to co-sign on that. I think, as we're wrapping up here, I'm always interested then, we've all made mistakes, particularly because product management is rough. And oftentimes we don't get adequate coaching or training. We're sort of thrown into the sea without maybe a life raft or anything, and you kind of sink or swim. What's a time where you've made a huge mistake and you had to figure out like, oh, I blew it. This is the lesson I'm walking away from with it.
Yeah. Like I think, I don't know if it's like a big mistake, but I'd say it's a negative pattern that I think caught myself doing. But it's really just kind of like, you're going to have outcomes. You're going to have kind of roadblocks that come up in your career. And then things are just not kind of sometimes not going to go the way you want it to. And then it's very easy to like blame others. But the problem is when you do that is that there's so many things that are out of your control. So it's like, what's the point? Blaming others and kind of like boo-hooing about it, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Like trying to like associate failures to like the fault of others basically, or some other person's shortcoming basically, and not like just self-reflecting enough and focusing on what you can control, I guess. So, one in product management, maybe it's you have a really good idea, or you have like a really good product proposal that you think it's really good, right? And you present it maybe to leadership, and it falls flat, or it doesn't get the kind of investment that you were hoping it would, or something like that. It's very easy. It's very tempting to say, well, that's their problem. They didn't see it. They didn't see the vision. It's not. I guess I got to find a new job because these people don't get it. But like what I found is that even when I was an SEO and I worked like a lot more with clients, I had that more like consulting kind of day-to-day life. It's very common like place among like the team to be like, oh, this is like a client that doesn't implement anything. They don't really kind of like, they just, they don't do anything, they don't listen, whatever. But when I started really like just reflecting more, and it is good because it's kind of like a user empathy type of practice or exercise, putting yourself in other people's shoes and just try to see, okay, where was my argument for this idea like flawed, or where was the logic like where was the argument not compelling enough, or you know what I mean? I don't know. I think
What's the history of that? What's the history of the org that just that they have concerns about it? There's all sorts of pieces. It's a huge. I think often we blame ourselves a lot, and then also when we don't, to your point, we don't want to blame ourselves because we don't have all the context. It's really easy to like associate, to use your words, associate those failures.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and like my transition was tough because in the beginning, because I like overnight kind of felt like, oh wow, I kind of knew what I was doing in this previous role, and I got it, and I kind of like had my groove, and then it's like overnight, like, I don't know what's going on, I don't know what's happening. So it's like very,
common feeling.
And so, I mean, that's something that I think when I really stopped doing that and try to focus more on like, okay, where are the areas I can improve? What are the things I have control over, and just kind of like go full in on that. That's where I really like I've seen, I feel like the best bounce back, and it's been the best, kind of like most worthy of my time to think of things.
Yeah, it reminds me of an old saying and a joke my grandfather would say to me all the time. He would say, the world's wrong. We're okay, but the world's wrong. But now that I think about it, I'm really not so sure about you either. And sort of he would just blame everyone else on problems, or anytime I was having a rough day, he's like, yeah, the world's wrong. The world's wrong. You're okay. Maybe not, but the world's wrong. Just look at it that way. And it was always this funny jokey. But Tarek, we are at time. I want to thank you so much for this great conversation. I love all the resources you shared. We will get the follow up if folks are interested in reaching out to you. What's the best way if they wanted to follow up and ask questions?
I think LinkedIn is the best. I want to write more, but I'd say right now just LinkedIn.
Yeah, no, that's great. I mean, with all of your doing, and I understand. I mean, there's only 24 hours of time in the day, and I always want to be doing more. And I realize I need to scale back a lot. But I really appreciate it. This is such a great conversation. I think there's going to be a lot for our listeners to really take away from, and then go and find some additional resources. There's so many that I haven't heard of, so I'm really excited to go learn about those as well. I want to thank you again. I wish you the best in your endeavors, and hopefully if we have some additional panels and stuff of ideas of what we're after, may have you back on the show.
I love that. Thank you so much for having me, Toland. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, it was great. Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening. Hopefully you got some great actionable insights out of this episode. We're so excited to dig deeper into data product management and its many facets. If you want to engage more with the show, you can follow us on LinkedIn and check out Soda's website at soda.io for more related content around product management in data. And if you are a practitioner bringing product management practices to data and want to potentially be a guest, please check the show notes for a link to apply. And as always, we strongly encourage people from underrepresented groups in tech to apply. Much as I'm a handsome devil, we don't want all our guests only looking like me. So again, let's get excited for more digging into data product management in action.